Hello, my name is Dr. Katrina Gamble, and I am the CEO of Sojourn Strategies, a people centered social impact consulting firm where we work with organizations, brands, and leaders to help us move closer towards a more just and equitable world. Thank you for joining us for our Building Belonging series. Over the last couple of years, I have had conversations with people across the country about what is it that they need in this moment, a moment where there's increased isolation and polarization, to feel more connected and a more deeper sense of belonging. And consistently, what we heard was that people are yearning for places of community and deeper levels of connection. So we wanted to launch this series so I could have conversations with leaders across industries to learn about how they are building community and creating belonging and helping people find pathways to take action and feel deeper levels of connection in this moment. And I am so incredibly excited today to be joined by Nubia Younge. She is a world traveler, an entrepreneur, and the CEO of Black in Travel and Black in Tulum. Her work has been most recently featured in Essence, and I like to call her a curator of community and belonging. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with her. And also, I also call her a friend. Thanks, Nubia, for joining
Absolutely.
us.
Hey, Katrina, thank you for having me.
Nubia, one of the first questions I love to start these conversations off with is just giving you space to tell us a little bit more about your story in terms of how did you get into doing this work of creating these beautiful spaces of community and joy all across the globe?
Oh man, I always say that it was a gift to me, honestly. I grew up as the only child, so I've always wanted to have, people around and friendships and all those things. I enjoy hospitality. I went to school for hospitality management and events. So bringing people together was always it was just nature, second nature for me. So no matter where I went, I was that person that spoke. I smile and I would say hello. Where you from? Firsthand.
Yes,
I spark a
yes.
conversation. It's just who I am innately, and I just love that I was able to do that as also a business.
Thanks for sharing that. So, one of the things that we learned when we were having conversations with folks is that there's a lot happening in our world. And with the pandemic and then just current events, that a lot of people are feeling really isolated and alone. And at the same time, people are really looking for spaces of community. And a word that often comes up in our conversations is this word belonging, which
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, well, what does that mean? But I always say, you know it when you feel it. So I always like to ask guests if they could share a moment where you felt a deep sense of belonging, and what about that moment led you to feel that sense of belonging?
Oh, man. That is it. Okay, first let's start with community. I always ask people, what does community mean to you? Because I believe post pandemic, it looks very different than what it looked like
Mm,
pre pandemic. And even though the pandemic was just, it is not was because I believe there's still so much of it happening continuously. Um, it made my business become community. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because in Tulum, Mexico was the only place that was pretty much open during the pandemic. So there were thousands of people trying to find that community and a sense of just connection to people that they couldn't get at home.
mm,
So I say that because it was pretty much sitting at my events. I would sit and I would just look at these beautiful sea of people of color in Mexico, traveling all the way to Tulum just to be able to have a sense of community in this
mm.
beautiful paradise. And I would cry. I would literally shed tears. Like my
Wow.
staff used to laugh at me. They'd be like, here she go again. But that was when I believe that's when I really felt a sense of belonging. I was like, I, I did this. Like it made me feel like this was what I was meant to do. And that's when I first had my first ever really sense of belonging.
I love that. I love that. And Nubia, can we take a step back? So I introduced you, and everyone should know you if they don't already. But could you tell folks what is your businesses? I'm emphasizing the S because I know you are always coming up with brilliant, innovative ideas. So let folks know a little bit more about what is Black and Travel and what is Black and Tulum and whatever other new things you're cooking up right now.
Oh man. Well, hello everybody. My name is Nubia Young and I am a multi hyphenate. I have started off as the founder and CEO of Black in Tulum, which is a communal space in Tulum, Mexico for people of color. We host approximately 5 to 6 events a week, 52 weeks a year, and we are celebrating our 5 year anniversary. So
Congratulations.
thank
I can
you.
attest. I've been. It is lit. If you were in Tulum, you need to go to one of the Black and Tulum events.
Thank you. And with that, I decided to expand my brand to Black and Travel, which is the parent company of Black and Tulum. And Black and Travel is like what I am looking to grow into the one-stop shop for people of color when you're looking for things to do globally and be able to see representations of yourself there, whether that's Black-owned businesses, whether that's Indigenous businesses, whether that's just doing experiences and excursions with people of color in that country, or just connecting. I also have been living outside of the US for almost a decade. So I have built communities in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I have built communities in Mexico, also Colombia, and now I'm looking at South Africa. So it's like I'm just expanding all over, and yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey. I've been on this pursuit, and the pursuit of all things, I'll just say.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And so I appreciate you sharing. And we'll make sure to definitely drop links into the comments for folks who definitely should follow all the things that you're doing, including yourself, so they can figure out how to get connected to Black and
Thank
Travel and Black and Tulum. So I want to get back to this conversation about community. So you named too that a lot of your work is really about creating spaces for people of color when they're traveling. Why do you feel that that's so important? Like, what was the need that you were addressing by creating those spaces that were particularly targeted at Black and travelers of color?
Well, for me specifically, I'm also a Gen Xer. And
Mhm.
when
Me
I
too.
was when I was really getting tired of the United States and all of the things that were happening and continue to happen, right? As a single mother of two young adults, and as somebody who really was trying to work her way up the corporate ladder, but could never really feel or had a sense of getting there, right? To be honest, I never made more than $65,000 in a year living and working in the United States in the administration or administrative field. I got laid
Mhm.
off. I decided to, I was just angry. I was just like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to sit in front of another damn Becky or Tom and try to give my worth, right? Sell my worth, sell myself to this person based on the stuff that's on my resume, knowing
Mhm.
how smart I am, knowing how, how I'm innovative. I know my talents, and I just needed somebody to give me a break. And I just felt like I wasn't getting that break. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to move abroad. I'm going to just go for like a year and just travel. And when I started researching, I didn't see anybody that looked like me.
Mm.
All I seen was these YouTube videos of young white millennials talking about traveling Southeast Asia for $5 or $10 a day, living in these hostels and all that stuff. And I was like, well, that's not me, but if they can do it and they're basically babies right out of college, I can do this
Mhm.
as an adult woman with, some money in the bank. I ended up doing what most people would never have done, but I took out my 401k because it's my money, and I, bought a one-way ticket and I went to Thailand. And it wasn't until I landed there that I realized that we were already there. but
Mm,
nobody was talking about it. Nobody was vlogging. People of color just didn't have those platforms. So that's when I created Chronicles Abroad with Francis. And it was a podcast where we would chronicle our journeys as Black women moving abroad. And that was kind of the start of it. Now, granted, here we are, like, what, 8 years later, and I see it all the time and I love it. But I'm just like, wow, when I started, nobody was doing this.
right.
And I knew that it was needed, because had I seen representation of myself, I would have I would have reached out, I would have asked questions, I would have felt more secure, in what I was doing. But I knew for me in that moment that I was leaving, I might have not knew anybody, but I knew that God had my back. So I was, I'm a Sagittarius, so I kind of just I'm not like most Cancers and Virgos and things like that. They have to kind of
Why are
make
you
sure.
calling me out,
I'm
Nubia?
just saying, y'all got to make sure everything, T's are crossed and I's are dotted. I'd be like, look, we'll just figure it out when we get there.
Honestly, I remember you telling me, you're like, okay, I'm moving abroad. And I was like, okay, girl. I was excited for you. And then it was literally, I think like less than a month later, you were gone. I was like, oh, she was serious.
I was serious. Yeah. And I had no roadmap. I had no game plan, no
Mm,
blueprint. But before I left, I even said, I did a prayer for myself, like, the Sierra prayer. I was just like, I'm open to it all. I'm
mm.
open to the entire experience. And honestly, the experience has been just absolutely beautiful. And I see more and more people of color allowing themselves to step out because of the representation that they see out there now.
I love that. And I love that what you talked about when you said you looked around and you didn't see anyone that looked like you. Because when we talk to people about this idea of belonging, one of the number one things that they say is that it's about being seen. And
Mhm.
so the fact that you didn't see it, but you were willing to go out there and create spaces and opportunities for other people to see themselves in that way is incredibly powerful. So
Thank
thank you for
you.
doing that.
Thank you.
Um, so the next question, I still want to dig in on this idea of community because, um, you know, when you think about, well, you're not here, look at you. When I say here, I mean the US. There's a lot happening
Mm,
in this country right now. And I know a lot of people are feeling frustrated, anxious, and all these things. And I always say that in moments of deep struggle, that community becomes even more important. And so I'm curious, and you don't have to speak to this moment in particular, but I'm just like curious for you when you think about the power of community as a way to move through difficult situations. Like, what is, when I say that, like, what comes up for you? Are there examples that you might share with folks who might be having challenges and how they can leverage community as a way to like find a path forward?
Well, again, it goes to what is your definition of community? And I
Mm,
think that's where you start is like, what does community look like and truly mean to you? And those are the things that you set out to find. So as I navigated this space and as I navigated the world, I also had to sit in solitude a lot. Right. And that's where I learned a lot more about myself. I learned a lot more about my discernment. I learned a lot more about how my body feels when I speak to people and all those things. And I also had to sit with, what does community look like for me? What does that
mm,
mean? And all of these things help you learn so much more about what's going to help you thrive and move forward. And I think what happens is sometimes people think community means like all these people and you have multiple friends and all this stuff. And at one point that's what I thought community meant. So as I'm navigating these spaces and I'm losing people, and I'm mourning those losses, right? Because,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about to death. I'm talking about people just literally not wanting to be friends anymore, or not really supporting, or not doing. And I was just like, what is going on? What is it about me and this and the other? And then I really realized that I was leveling up. I
Mm.
was on a different trajectory than them. And just like a spaceship goes up, what happens? There's certain things that fall off in order for it to continue to go through the atmosphere, right? And so you have to kind of look at yourself like that. You're going to shed, you're going to lose, and you're going to gain. As you lose, it opens up more avenues and space for you to learn more about yourself, to be in the rooms that you truly want to be in and seek. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so my concept and thought of community has changed over time. It
Right.
continues to change. It continues to change. I love to see people. I love Black joy. I love seeing Black men and women just, you know what I'm saying? I love Black
Yes.
joy. I love seeing us. I love seeing us thrive. I love seeing us, just doing the things. And I love the level of entrepreneurship that's also been blossoming over the last 5 to 10 years with Black women and men coming into businesses. Um, so for me, I just really, yeah, it's really about your individual perspective of what community means to you, to be honest with you, Katrina.
Right. Well, I mean, I love that you said that because that is such a gem, and folks are commenting on that in the chat. So thanks for that. And if you have questions for Nubia, make sure you start dropping them in there and we'll make sure to get to that. But this idea that community is, you really should be specific when you say community. Like, what is it that you're looking for? And I love that you were talking about how you needed to build community that aligned with your vision for yourself and where you were going. And that community isn't just about how many people are around you, but about the alignment and quality of those people that you're building community with. That's
Absolutely.
incredibly, incredibly powerful. And yes, Black Joy. I almost said that in the introduction of you, and when I was introducing you, that I was going to say that you're also a curator of Black Joy, because I think of that a lot when I think of you, in part because of the spaces you create, but also just the energy that you bring into the room. You have the big smile, and I just think you're someone who genuinely brings joy into spaces that you're coming into. So I appreciate you naming that. And um I guess what are some things that we could be doing to, because I feel like because there's a lot happening that sometimes, and it's not to ignore the challenges that
Mhm.
we're facing, but also sometimes you need a break from the heavy. And so I don't know, what would you say to people about, okay, yes, acknowledging what's happening in this moment, but also saying it's okay to find spaces for joy, and like how do you do that?
So one of the things, and just so people know, Katrina and I have been friends for what, 2 decades?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so. You can't tell from the melanin popping, but yes. Somewhere around
We
there.
Yeah, we've known each other for many, 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 many years. So you've seen many iterations of myself and vice versa. And um, so what I will say is this: we don't we don't give ourselves enough credit,
Mm,
right? And as Black women specifically, we want to hold the weight of everything on our shoulders, right? I got it. I got it. I got it. If it's not done this way, I got to do it myself. All of these things, right? This grind, all I got to do is grind a couple of more years and earn a little bit more money. Then I'm going to do this. I just
mm,
got to wait for my kids. I just got to wait for, or my husband doesn't this. It's always something. And what I realize is when I talk to women over and over and over again, and I'm sorry, fellas, if you're on this and you're listening, but I really love and am passionate about Black women. But when I talk about women, you know what I hear less of is what it is that they want for themselves. It's
mm,
always what they got to do for everybody else. My aging parent, my kids, my husband, my wife, everybody else, the job, they never put themselves first. and we're dying. And I'm not
Mhm.
talking about like, I'm talking about literally dying by
Right.
50 because we are stressed, because we're not taking care of ourselves, because we're not eating healthy, because we're not resting. We're dying, and that needs to change. And so, what I've been doing is really talking about what I like to call the soft life. And I know some people have misconstrued what that sounds like, or that word. They make it seem like you're just sitting around sipping champagne. Do it, even if that's the case, because I've
But
had days
listen,
when I do that too.
yes, I was gonna say you could. I mean, that's fine.
Yep, that's fine too. You know what I mean? But I can do that because I had put in the work. You get what
Mhm.
I'm saying? I've done my work. My kids are grown. Whatever they're doing in their life is not my it's not my problem. They're grown, and if they need me, I'm here. And that's the thing. We try to carry everybody else's burdens. You know, understand what I'm saying? I
Right.
just lost I just lost a family member, just 3 days ago, where they
So
unalived
sorry.
themselves. And I sit with that because I'm just like, why was he so unhappy? We are so unhappy with where we are because we're looking for the external validation, because we
Mhm.
want love and we want to be seen by the people around us. People are so mean now, you know? They
Yeah.
don't People don't even want to pick up the phone and hear your voice anymore. They rather text message you, if that. You got to really start taking care of you and your needs. So speaking of, a new thing that I'm doing, Katrina, I'm not sure if you're aware of, because I'm not sure if I shared this, but the Essence feature did share it. I'm starting a new soft life retreat called Ori, which is divine alignment, the head of your table, right? And it's
Mhm.
really centered around, I want Black women to come with me to different parts of the world. And I'm talking about very intimate, 8 to 10 people.
I
And
love
I'm
that.
going to focus those trips around rest. I'm going to focus those trips around luxury. I want to focus those trips around sisterhood and connection, and what I call true community, right? Like, these women that are going to invest in themselves to go on these trips are women that need to meet each other, because the whole premise of that trip is divine alignment. And we're all going to be in divine alignment. We're going to have deep conversations. We're going to cry. We're going to share. We're going to love on each other and ourselves. And I think that's what
Yeah.
we need to do more of.
I love that. I love that. That well, I can't wait to I read about it in the Essence article, which I'll just say, as your friend, when I saw the feature, I was like, yeah. So deserved,
Thank
and so inspired by you. And I read about it, and so I can't wait to hear more about it, because you're right. You're naming all of the things, and we saw that there has been this year increasingly Black women saying, I'm tired, I'm resting, I'm taking care of myself. And I love you saying that that doesn't necessarily mean that you're checking out, but it's also important for our own survival to take care of ourselves, and that joy is not something that we have to earn, but it's something that we all deserve. So I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more tell me how to pronounce it again.
So it's a Yoruba word called Ori, or
Ori, got
yep,
it.
it's Ori, and then I use the term, I added I, which is AYE. So the two together is divine alignment, head of the table kind of situation. It's however you interpret it, but they have their certain words, different meanings. Um, but it's necessary. It's
Mhm.
necessary. I've lost way too many people before the age of 55, literally. And look at us in late 40s. We look like, we don't look like what we've been through. I'll just say
Right.
that. And we shouldn't, you know. But we also need to be able to tap into just saying, you know what, today I'm going to clear my calendar and I just want to take myself on a date. I still see comments of people that go, I would never, how could you sit at like a dinner at a restaurant by yourself. That is so lame or something. And I'm just like, you don't know what you're missing. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like
Mhm.
I don't wait for anybody to do anything.
Yes.
I love to
Yes, that is
go.
true.
I love, and that's the beauty of life is like, and that's one more thing I want to mention that I think a lot of us don't pay more attention to is gratitude, and not
Mm,
gratitude for just waking up going, oh, thank you God for waking me up today. No, I'm talking about true gratitude where every single thing that you look at there you find beauty in, including yourself. You
mm,
understand what I'm saying? If everybody can get to a point of focusing on their own stuff and their own light, their own beauty, their own, health, and stop focusing on everybody else, the world would be so much better. I promise you it would be. Because the earth is beautiful. The world is beautiful, but we focus on the wrong things. And I can't even take in half of the things that are on social media at this moment.
yeah, I love that, to focus on the beauty. That's beautiful. Focus on the beauty is beautiful.
It
That was
is.
redundant, but I love that. There's some questions in the chat for you, Nubia, but before we get to those, I wanted to ask another question. One of the values at Sojourn is, and that we really try to work to build into our culture, is this idea that we call actionable hope.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what that means is that, we want people to feel hopeful, but we don't want hope to just be like, oh, I have hope. And then that's it. It's really about having hope and like, how do you put that into practice to actually impact some type of change? And so I'm curious, like, when you hear that term actionable hope, like, what does it mean for you? And is there an example of where you've practiced actionable hope in your life that you think would be great for folks here to hear that story and be inspired by?
Ooh, actionable hope. I think it kind of just goes back to what I just said. You know what I mean? Is really just paying attention to what it is that you want to do. I don't think that we take enough time to focus on our hobbies and our love and care for the things that we truly that bring joy to us, right? So once we do that, it opens up so many other doors because if you're okay, for instance, I'll mention this. I always love to cook.
Mm-hmm.
I love to cook. And during the pandemic, all I could do was cook because we couldn't really go anywhere. And then during that time, I was posting pictures of my food because I was very proud of myself. And people started asking me for the recipes. And then it just dawned on me. I was like, well, why don't I create a cookbook, like a digital cookbook, right? Created a digital cookbook and sold over 100 units all within less than a month, right?
Wow.
But it also gave people an inspiration to create these recipes and that it's those kind of things. All I did was continue to do something that I loved. And
Mm,
so it's the same thing. I see people who are trying to garden. I love watching those videos, right? Like to plant something and to watch that grow and then to be able to take what you've planted and eat it and let you and nourish your body and see how beautiful it becomes. It makes me hopeful that when I'm
mm,
ready to do it, I can do it. So it's just this whole thing, like I said, like we even mentioned smiles. I tell people when I step on stage to speak, I tell people every day, a smile and a hello is free.
yes.
And it radiates. You know what I'm saying? So that actionable hope to me are just doing the things that you love and letting the things that you love, you know, just expand to everybody else and illuminate.
I love that. So, actionable hope is about leaning into love
Yes, leaning into the things that you love.
that you love. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, before there's some questions for you in the chat, and folks have other questions, drop them in. But one question someone had was, Nubia, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced as a Black business owner in the travel industry?
Woo, how much time we got? Okay, so I'm gonna give you the real. One thing I don't do is I don't sugarcoat. So one of the things that I've had, my biggest challenge was a copyright infringement.
Mm,
I had somebody using a variation of my name, which was trademarked, and that caused me to lose clientele. That made people confused. That made me lose money, and I had to fight that. And I went through 3 years of fighting that person in court. You know what I'm saying? Or
mm,
not in court, but with our lawyers back and forth. And I was able to get them to have to rebrand. They have to stop using my name and all of those things. And we had their socials taken away. But that was costly. That was
yeah,
costly. So make sure that you make sure that you have a lawyer or somebody to help you make sure that your business documentation is in place, because that's one thing that I think that I did well. You know what I mean? Now
mhm,
it took me a little time because it was during the pandemic when I started Black and Tulum. So there was skeleton crews. It took me a year to get the trademark, but it was already in place.
mhm,
So I was able to backdate that. I had receipts. You get what I'm saying? I had
right,
receipts. But that was tough. That was tough as a Black woman in the travel industry, just wanting to do this, and somebody else was trying to take your same exact kind of blueprint and makeup and see it as their own. The other challenge I see is that everybody wants to do these things on their own and don't want to collaborate, which is I don't
mm,
understand in the gatekeeping, and I'm not about that life. So um, I have learned, and paid attention to who in the industry makes sense for me to work with, and who in the industry that are out there just for, self recognition, I guess you would say.
right.
And I do what works for me, and yeah, I pay more attention to my customer journey than I do my own wants, and I think
Yeah.
that's why I've been more successful in what I do.
That is a real gem. Paying attention to your customer wants, because I do think sometimes when folks are starting businesses, they're like, "Oh, this is what I love," but it's like you're not buying the
Yeah,
product yourself. So really understanding your audience is so incredibly important. And also appreciate you naming the challenge around the trademark piece, because I mean, I know for myself when I started Sojourn, I didn't know anything about running a business. I was just like, I'm
mhm,
really good at what I do and I have a network. And so here I am doing what I'm good at. But all of those, I've had to learn all of those other pieces,
as you
about
go.
having lawyers, finances, tech, all these things that, if you're just starting a business because you're like great at something, you have to learn. But it's incredibly important to be able to grow and also protect, like you said, protect the hard work that you have invested and created.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to loving what you do, because I mean, Katrina, you can attest to the fact that what I do as a business, I do also personally. You
mhm,
understand what I'm saying? Like
right,
you've been, and you know how I like to take care of the people who are coming as my guests. I do the same in my brands. You understand what I'm
right.
saying? I put that same level of care and energy into making sure that people feeling welcomed and that they're taken care of.
I love that. Okay, so there's a couple more questions for you.
Sure. What's
There's
up?
one question is, Nubia, did you experience moments of fear once you made the decision to go abroad and build your brand and business? If so, how did you push past those thoughts and feelings? What are a few tangible things you did to help you overcome?
Whew, okay. This whole thing is a thing. Um, did I experience moments of fear? I would say no.
Mm,
Um, when I do my talks, I talk about the 3 F's. The 3 F's are 3 things that I feel like will always keep you kind of from not doing something. And that is family, fear, and finance. I'm not saying
mm,
that in a negative. I'm just saying there's always some reason. And most of the time, those reasons center around family, fear, and finance. I knew this from the gate. And I was like, I'm not going to allow any of those 3 F's to keep me down. Right. So I set clear boundaries for myself and was like, if you're going to do this, lean all the way in and do this. That's why I said
mhm,
open to it all. So I didn't go in with fear. I went in with excitement. Like, what am I going to learn? What am I going to? And what I said was the worst case scenario ever would be that I did it and it didn't work out and I just went back.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I haven't been back, y'all. So it worked out. So I did not go into it with fear. And I think some of the tangible things that I can say is, well, not really tangible, but what I can say is bet on yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have the belief that you can do it and know that there's no such thing as failure. The failure is not doing it.
Right.
But as long as you go out there and try, then I don't see what's wrong with that. You know what I mean? I also tell people, do your due diligence research. Meet with people like myself who, and I have to say this, Katrina,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many people who have moved abroad over the last, few years, which I absolutely love. But what burns me the most is the people who have been abroad maybe 3 months. Or I just moved and this is how I did it. And it's like, it's your individual, like you can't do it like everybody else. This
Mm-hmm.
is your individual journey. You can use them as inspiration, but don't feed into everything that they said. You understand what I'm saying? It
Mm-hmm.
takes you time to learn the lay of the land, and a month, 2 months, 3 months is not about that. It's
Right.
really about just learning what works for you, because I've met a lot of people who moved abroad who had their tail underneath their behind and went back home because they didn't take the time to lean in. They just kind of
Mm-hmm.
jumped and didn't really research.
Right.
I
So,
hope that answered
yeah,
that question.
yeah, I think you absolutely did. And I think that that's really powerful too for people to who may not naturally be able to move past the fear, but just knowing that the things that
Mhm.
are going to be your challenges, family, fear, and finance, and just being very intentional about understanding how you navigate those for yourself. And I love that what you were saying too is that yes, do research, understand how other people did it, but ultimately it's going to be your own individual journey. So figuring that
Absolutely.
out is going to be important.
And with that, I literally been working on something called Novice to Nomad. I
Mm,
originally launched it in 2019, but of course the pandemic happened, so I shelved it. And it's really centered around that, how to navigate those 3 F's to get you prepared to not just move abroad, but get you prepared to um, navigate spaces that might feel uncomfortable. Do you understand what I'm saying?
mhm,
Including moving abroad. And we talk about all kind of things. And I'm also bringing in other industry leaders who have moved abroad, who have went back to the United States, who have had children abroad or created a multi six-figure business abroad and all those things. So it's not just coming from me, but coming from an array of people who have done it themselves and talking about their own stories, because I think that
right.
that's the most important part, is people sharing their story. So Novice to Nomad will be launching this at the end of the summer.
I love that. And it kind of comes all back to very curated community, right? It's like real learn, but learn from people who are experts and have experience doing what it is that you're trying to do. So I love
And I'm
that.
talking about 5 years plus. I'm not talking about 3 months. I'm talking about people who have been, who have been
Right.
abroad 5 plus years, and what their experience has been, good, bad, and indifferent. Like I said, I don't sugarcoat. I let people know, fully transparent and vulnerable stories that they have had to navigate and
Yeah.
learn.
I'm gonna come to this last question at the end before that, I'm gonna ask you another question because the last question is similar to what I would ask for the closing. But I guess just really any last thoughts, right? Like we build this series, Building Belonging, which, like I said, I think you are the ultimate curator of community around the world. So is there any last thoughts that you would want to leave folks with or share about this idea of creating spaces of belonging?
Oh man. Um I want people to be able to really sit with themselves and
Mm,
understand that taking time out to sit and just reflect, sit and just cry, sit and just journal, sit and just learn more about your wants, needs, and desires, right? And what that looks like. That's where it starts. I think I said this in the beginning. I've been on this pursuit of all things, right? When I first started, it was this pursuit of happiness. And I thought happiness meant all of the external things, right? Like, oh, cute, shiny, and all that stuff. And it wasn't until 5 years later that I learned that the pursuit of happiness was here the whole time. It was within me.
mm,
And I had to learn to be happy with me. I had to learn how to be okay with me. And like truly, because somebody once
mhm,
asked me, like, do you love yourself, Nubia? And I was like, heck yeah, and then she was like, no, really think about it. And then you have to think about it. And you're like, well, do I? Because the decisions that I make for myself are not the best for me, right? The things that you put,
mm,
whether it's not moving your body, not exercising, whether it's eating the wrong stuff, whether it's, having the wrong type of partners or the wrong type of friendships or just the wrong kind of energy. Is that true love for yourself if you're allowing those things to happen and and that you're consuming, right? So I would say start there. Start putting yourself in solitude where you allow yourself to learn so much more about yourself. And then as you start learning about yourself, go out there and allow yourself to touch, feel, smell, taste all of the things that you say that you desire and want. And you'll just see your life expanding and getting better. And when you're doing it, you're actually setting an example and you're now the representation for others who are
mm.
also in those spaces. And that's how it starts, literally.
I love that. I love that. That's so powerful because I think when we think about this idea of belonging in community, typically people talk about like what's external or relationships to others. And so I think it's really powerful that you're naming that. And first, you have to get the relationship with yourself right in order to have those other experiences with belonging and community. That's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Absolutely. Because I can tell you one thing that we all have done is they said, they did, she did, he did, she said, he. And when we stop focusing on the external, and somebody had to say that to me, they were like, well, have you thought about why you allowed them to do that? Or why did you do? When you start focusing on yourself and have self awareness, oh my gosh, even when you're in therapy, your therapist be like, yeah, you're pretty okay. Like it's a different kind of therapy session. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Because you're
mhm.
just you take accountability for your own stuff. And as you do that, you start to see different people's perspectives and you start respecting it. You don't have to agree, disagree, whatever, but you start respecting people differently and looking at things differently. And it just opens up for everything else. You know what I'm saying? So
I love that. Well, Nubia, this has been so fun. I was looking forward to this, and it was as incredible as I thought it would be. I really appreciate you making space to join us for this series. And before we sign off, there was a question in the chat, and I was going to ask you this as well: is how can people support you, your events, your businesses, and how can folks contact you for speaking engagements? Basically, what are all the ways in which people can engage with the incredible things that you're moving and building out in the world? And also
awesome.
tell people where they can follow you on all the channels and things like
Okay, and all the things, all the things.
that.
Okay. Well, first, I have, 3 different brands, nubiayounge.com, which is NUBIAYOUNGE. There is an E at the end of Young. So nubiayounge.com, you can find me there, learn a lot more about me and the things that I do. You can also hire me for speaking. I love to speak. I love doing workshops, and I love meeting people. Then we have Black in Travel. and it's blackintravel.com. That's where you can go and you can book experiences, excursions. You can find out about some of the things we do in the LGBT community and the events that we have. We have a wonderful event called Kismet Pride happening August 8th through the 11th in Tulum. We are almost sold out. We have celebrities. Jerry Johnson is hosting. We have some amazing influencers doing activations. It's just going to be a time, and that is going to be beautiful. Black in Tulum is celebrating our 5-year anniversary, July 23rd through the 28th. Yay, 5 years. And you can come and celebrate with us and book tickets at blackintulum.com. And again, that's blackintulum.com. Novice to Nomad will be launched at the end of the summer. That will be on the Black and Travel and also the Nubia Younge website. I like to kind of keep things copacetic, but you can find us on social media at all of the same things. And you can find me personally at I am Nubia Younge on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook under Nubia Younge.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yes, it was a magical conversation, Molly. This was incredible. I really appreciate you. And for folks who want to continue to follow this series, they can follow us at Sojourn Strategies on LinkedIn and also Instagram, and also our website, sojournstrategies.com. Nubia, I really appreciate you both as a friend and also just someone who creates such beautiful spaces out in the world. Thank you for being here.
I love you too,
amazing.
My friend. Love you. And thank you guys for joining us today. I wasn't able to see everybody out there, but thank you for the questions. And I just look forward to reach out, please. If you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect, send me a connection request. And and if there's a way that you want to support or you think that I can support your brand or business or yourself, please reach out.
Love that. Thanks, Nubia.
Thank you for having me.